Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home.
Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I am recording live from the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating Facebook group. So if you haven't joined us there, please pop in, go to Facebook, type in the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating, and you will be invited to join us. And we'd love to have you and continue the conversation there from this show and from other topics that we bring up there in the group. So yeah, welcome, and please join us. If you're new to the Heal Your Hunger Show and you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher, really happy to have you here as well. And this is where we talk about things that have nothing to do with food and weight most of the time, and yet they have everything to do with food and weight. So, you know, when you change, everything changes. And if you don't change, nothing changes. So I'm sure you've heard that before. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. So this is where we talk about real change, but the change that matters. You know, if you're trying to change your diet and you're a chronic dieter, forget about it. It's not going to work. It's going to be short-lived. You're going to be back in the food, you know, in no time. And I'm sure you have experience of that. I certainly did. I was 50 pounds overweight, and it was a chronically miserable situation. Actually, I was chronically miserable because I was never happy about my weight. I was always fighting my weight. I was always fighting food. I was always on a diet, but never enjoying the food that I ate. And you know, I hated my body perpetually, you know, and that's no way to live. And I think we do just kind of put up with it, right? We just live that way because we don't think there's a better way or any way out of it. And so we just sort of muddle along. And I just want to say, if you're muddling along, those times are over. Like, you don't have to live that way anymore. And so I'm going to show you how you can live differently here at the Heal Your Hunger Show. Now, I also want to tell you that I have a program specifically designed to help people overcome emotional eating. So just listening to my show might not get you where you want to go. I know you want to do it all by yourself, all alone. You want to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and handle it on your own because it's very embarrassing. The things you do with food. Well, you know, I get all that. And guess what? It's not going to work. So every emotional eater needs support. You can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. And I've been doing, you know, I've been on the healing path for 31 years. So if I can't do it alone, chances are you can't do it alone either. And that's why I've created my program to help people. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, let's have a chat. You know, stop muddling around. You know, even with the information I'm going to share with you, there is a specific plan of action. And so if you want to have a chat with me, I'll explain how that works, you know, and if you might be a candidate for that. So not everybody is. So that's why I like to have a conversation first. But there's a link in the show notes for this show where you can do that. You can actually schedule a call with me. I think I have some spots right now actually available. So if you listen to this, hopefully if you jump to my calendar, you'll hear that. So, or see that rather. So anyway, good to have you. What I want to do is talk about something that I think is really, really important and really overlooked. And it's subtle, but it's something I've been noticing in my own life. Certainly in my relationship with my husband. And then in this past week, you know, I spent a week, if you listen to my last show, I spent the week in Seattle, which was rainy. We had one incredibly glorious day, but the rest was kind of gray and sometimes rainy, as it should be. It's Seattle. And it's actually where I met my husband. But I want to talk to you about my this particular topic because that week that I spent in Seattle, I got some really, I had an interesting experience. I was up there doing Dave Asprey, who is the founder of Bulletproof Coffee. He's got this kind of intensive week where you get your brain hacked and you have you're all hooked up to these machines and they look at your brain waves and they scan your brain, and then they supposedly upgrade your brain by putting these special caps on, and you have to do these exercises, these thinking exercises while you have these caps on. I can't even really begin to explain it. There's a name for it. It's called Neurofeedback. So that's what I was doing. And It was really a cool experience. I mean, Dave Asprey is, brilliant. He's a friend, and he's just always so brilliant. And he actually has a podcast. If you're into this kind of thing, it's pretty brainy, pretty interesting, but pretty brainy, and maybe a little too left brain for me most of the time. But it's, what he does is amazing, and a lot of people have been helped by the bulletproof diet as well. So maybe I'll have him on the show sometime. But I digress. What I want to talk to you about is the fact that when I went to get my brain hacked, they wanted me to delve into my childhood stuff. And I was highly resistant because I thought, I've spent so much time dealing with my stuff. I mean, that's what I've done to heal from emotional eating, is I've gotten very clear and very honest, and I've confronted a lot of feelings and a lot of buried stuff around my childhood, which wasn't terrible by any stretch of the imagination. But, we all have stuff, and our childhoods, cause, circumstances and a chain of circumstances that do, when they're buried with food, they do keep us perpetually eating. And in order to heal, it helps to, go back there and do some digging. And in my program, I have a really systematic way for people to do that. And, I've done a lot of that work. And so when I was up here in Seattle, at this beautiful home doing this work, I was kind of like, I was a little sophomoric and kind of like, I've done this, like I've done a lot of work on myself, like really, like I'm kind of done with that, the whole parents and, childhood, all that stuff. And what was interesting is that for 2 days during this week, that I was there, I was so resistant that I was angry. Like I started to get really angry, like screw this place, and I'm going to leave. I'm going to blow this pop stand. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to do this. This is bullshit, and and so I had that thought. Have you ever had those thoughts? Ever been involved in a program and then felt like, this isn't for me, I want to cut out of here? Well, that's what I was doing. And and I was feeling like I don't need to do this work, I've done it, blah, 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 it's behind me. And yet I know enough to know that when I'm highly resistant to something, I need to pay attention. I need to notice that, which I did. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I mean, I wanted to use every escape tactic that there was out there. I mean, I really wanted to run away. And I had an attitude. I was angry. And I knew, in my heart of hearts, I knew something's up, something's up, and I better pay attention. And sure enough, I pushed through, I pushed through those uncomfortable feelings. Thank goodness I know to do that, to not run, not escape, not eat, not drink, not escape in some self-destructive way, but to move through it. And I did, and I got to the other side of it, and I got some beautiful benefits from doing the deeper work that they were, it wasn't like therapy type work or healing the inner child, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't that. It was just needing to, tap into experiences from my past, sort of reframe them and do that while my brain was being worked on or hacked. So it was actually it was fine, and it worked out, and it helped me tremendously. I made connections I hadn't made before. So I ended up being really grateful that they made me do it, that they forced me to go through this, which they did, and I could have left, but that I didn't leave. And then I went through this uncomfortableness and to get to the other side. And there were some amazingly beautiful, morsels of truth and awareness that I would not have had I had my mind closed shut. And that's really my topic for today is it time to update your files? And the thing is, as emotional eaters, we tend to have fixed ideas about things. We tend to, as nice as we are, and I know we're so nice, as nice as we are, we tend to be very black and white thinkers and, kind of rigid in our thinking on many things, and not fluid and not plastic, in the way we think and where things move, and we're open and we roll with things. We get very fixed on our ideas because they make us feel safe. The way we think often will make us feel safe. So think about it. Are there beliefs that you have, whether they're, political or religious, or beliefs you have about your family or about your process of healing, or about sexuality? I mean, are there ideas that you have that you're very fixed about, and you're like, this is what I believe, and I know I believe this? Now, I know I talk on this show a lot about, being your authentic self and really standing in your truth, which is important. But I'm talking about, on the flip side of that, being too rigid and too unmovable in the way that you think, because that is, just as much of a problem, and folly as, as not being true to ourselves, So I just want to sort of point that out, is that, what I'm talking about today on this show is learning to update your files and not staying in your fixed place. Okay. And I'm going to give you some examples. I mean, one example, of course, was my experience at 40 Years of Zen. But where I thought I was done. I thought I don't need to do any more childhood stuff, and I was wrong. I was wrong. And had I held on to my belief, I would have missed an amazing opportunity. Another example of this was in my marriage. I separated from my husband about 7 months ago, and over the past few years, which have been difficult. I mean, nobody just ups and separates from their spouse. Things for me were difficult, and part of what was difficult is that my husband hadn't updated his files on me. Okay. I mean, this is a very long-term relationship. We'd been together for 31 years. So we went through many iterations of a relationship. He started out as my mentor. Then we worked together. Then he was my lover. And then, eventually my husband. So, he was my mentor. Then I mentored him. We mentored each other. I mean, it's been through a lot of iterations, and in a very fluid way, in a beautiful way. We rolled with it, and we came through, 31 years of being together that way, in that fluid way. However, one of the things that was really hard for me is that, in the past several years, I've grown a lot. I've really been on a quest to just become my authentic self. And, when you're in a relationship for a really long time, and I know lots of people who listen to this show are, long-term marriages, and relationships, when you're in a relationship for a really long time, there is the peril of thinking about a person, and them, and their ways, and not updating your file. And this is what I believe happened in many ways with my relationship with my husband, is that I've been growing and expanding and, changing in a lot of ways that I don't think he noticed. I don't think he noticed. And I just don't think he noticed. That's the bottom line. I don't think he had his eyes open to it, because he had fixed ideas about who I was and what my stuff was, what my issues were. And so it was easy for him to sort of say, oh, that's Tricia being such and such, or that's Tricia having that issue. She's been struggling with that issue for a long time, or whatever. And, I came to a place where there's certain things that weren't, oh, just Tricia being such and such. They were like, no, this is actually me speaking up about something, that's important to me, or this is me realizing something about myself and moving in that direction, and I can't think of exact examples, except to say that he did not update his file on me. And it became frustrating to me, because I was growing and expanding and changing, and he kind of had me in a certain place, and so didn't notice my changes. So when it came to a point of separating, where I just kind of felt like I was needing to spread my wings, needing to kind of bust out in this way, it was very surprising to him. And yet to me, it was pretty aligned with where I was going in my life, which was a lot of expansion, and a lot of needing, like, to spread my wings. That's kind of a trite saying, but I've been expanding and growing and just busting out of my own shell for a long time, which is perfect and wonderful. And I'm so grateful. It's what I should be doing. It's what we should all be doing, and, we don't want to stagnate. We don't want to stay in the same place. We don't want to be the same person. There was a saying many years ago that I heard, and I loved it. And it's, last year's truth is this year's bullshit. Okay. And what I love about that is that, the person I was a year ago is not who I am today. So the things I was so sure about a year ago, I might not believe today, or I might have a different opinion about. And that's really the kind of elasticity I'm looking for in my life. I coined a term. I think I coined it. I came up with it, but I might have seen it somewhere, which is spiritual elasticity, which might be kind of like redundant. I mean, spirituality, I think, is elasticity. But anyway, for the point of emphasis, spiritual elasticity is when my mind is open and when I do update my files continually, and that's what I think. I think my husband would have been well served had he noticed more how I was growing and changing and needing different things in my relationship with him and in my relationship with myself. And when we don't update our files on people, we tend to pigeonhole them and have them in a certain place and then dismiss new information, and that's really a dangerous thing. Dangerous meaning it could cause a real change or a problem in the relationship. And I believe it did in our relationship. So I really want to bring this back to today, the here and now, and ask you, in what ways are you not updating information? And I'll give you another example. My sister, this is really sweet. She recently took a trip to California, and she had a boyfriend. She used to live in California. She had a boyfriend there. And she said to me, Tricia, I really feel the need to contact this guy and see him. I feel, kind of responsible for him because she had broken up with him, and it was a hard breakup, and she felt bad, and she felt like she'd hurt him. And even though she'd made amends to him before, she just felt responsible for checking in on him, making sure he was okay. Not like he was going to off himself or anything, but just she just felt this pull, this tug to see him. And she did. She contacted him. She went by to see him. She met his long-term, partner and mate, and who was lovely. And they had my sister had a beautiful talk with him. And what she learned is that her thoughts about how the relationship ended weren't the same as his. She felt this burden of responsibility and this guilt, over having hurt him and maybe scarred him. And, and it's been over 10 years, maybe 12 years or so since they had the breakup. But she said, Tricia, it was so amazing because he had a total different take on it. And he wasn't sorry. He didn't feel as though I had harmed him. He really felt grateful for the relationship. And these are the ways he's grown since. And she said, here I am. I've carried this burden for so long. I've felt this guilt, and responsibility. And she said, thank God I followed that inner voice and went to see him so I could update my file, and she used that term. And that's why I'm using that term now, because it's so brilliant, to update our files. She got an update on her file with that man, where it's not what she thought it was, and she could finally put down the mallet and stop carrying that burden and guilt. And so that's why it's so important that we remain spiritually elastic and open to new information around our relationships. Don't get caught, just believing somebody is a certain way. People change and grow. When we're on a spiritual path, we're looking to change and grow. So are other people. We're not the only ones. Other people are going through life's trials, and those trials are shaping them, and they're becoming, better versions of themselves on account of it. And so it's really important is that, we give people the benefit of the doubt, and we don't pigeonhole them, and we don't remain rigid in our thinking about people. I mean, there's people that we might have hated and thought they were just asses, and then if we don't update our files, if we don't, get updated information or we're not open to the idea there might be updated information, we will keep that person in that place and with that judgment. And this is really a lot about judgment, isn't it? When we do judge people a certain way, or judge, political parties in a certain way, religions in a certain way, philosophies of thought, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. When we think we know, and that's really what this comes down to, is arrogance, right? When we think we know, we might miss out on some really, really, really important information that can be really life altering. And so I want you to think about that. Like, what is it that you're dead set against? Like, what are you dead set against, or what are you dead set for? And is there some wiggle room in there? Is there some opportunity for new information? I mean, just be open. Just be open. And I try to be that way even politically. I mean, it's not always easy. It's easy to kind of pigeonhole political parties or actions or philosophies of thought and vilify the other side, and that kind of thing. And I just always try to remain open as possible, to new ideas, and just consider ideas and not get pigeonholed in any one place or party or anything, because I don't know everything. I don't know everything. I don't have all information. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very challenging, but it's important for me personally to not be egoic, in my ways of thought, and to notice when I'm rigid and when I'm judgmental and when I've condemned somebody and decided somebody is a certain way. Like, can I be open to new information? Can I be open to information and update my file when there is new information? And I just really want to encourage that of you. You might be really dead set in your belief that you can't change regarding your relationship to food and weight. You may have decided it's like, I'm a hopeless case. It's too late. I've tried so many things. I'm not even going to bother. And I will ask you to be open on that as well, because so much of the time, emotional eaters, the things they've tried are physical. Like, they're mostly physical. Their diet, they're weight loss oriented or exercise oriented or hormone oriented or something where it's physical, when there's a whole nother layer to the problem that if you don't address, the physical won't matter, so be open. I just had a client come on board, and she just, the things she tried had been so physical, and she thought she was hopeless. She thought, nothing will work for me. And it's true, the way she was going, nothing would work for her, because she was barking up the wrong tree. But now, dealing with emotional eating, that's a whole nother ball game. When you address and heal the underlying causes, you don't have to diet. You don't have to struggle with food and weight. Like, the weight can come off naturally because you're not overeating anymore. You're not reaching for food for reasons other than nutrition. And so I just want to challenge you to update your file on your weight loss experience. Like, yeah, you might have bombed on like 40 diets in your lifetime. But chances are those diets, weren't ever going to work, because they're too much dealing with the symptom and not with the underlying causes. So when you deal with the underlying causes, it's a total game changer. So be open to updating your files and realizing there is a way out, one that does not involve food and diet and control, and like sweating it out at the gym. That's the truth. I know that to be true. So maybe you can update your file on that. So I'm just really here to remind you that when we're rigid in our thinking, when we think we know, there's probably more we can learn, and I was shown this last week, and I'm shown this time and time again. This is a spiritual path, that we're on. And I know if you're here and you're resonating with what I share, that you are a seeker. You want to have new experiences in life, even if you're afraid. And I get the fear. I've been afraid my whole life. So emotional eaters are very afraid. That's one of our signature emotions, and that, especially one that drives us to food, is fear. But, who do you need to update your file on? Is it you? Do you need to update your file on you? Maybe you're not the bad person you think you are. You're not that good at being bad. So, I ask that you update your file on that, and just be open. Just notice, right now, just notice your thoughts. Notice your thoughts. How rigid is your thinking? How sure are you of things in your life? And can you make a change there? Can you just pry open your thinking a little bit, little by slow, and just consider new ideas, consider new approaches. Because if you don't change, nothing will change. And when you change, everything changes. So that's my message for you today. I hope that helps. And it is a lifesaver, and it's changing my life day by day when I let it, when I'm willing. So thanks so much. Again, please join us in the Secret Sauce group. And I can't wait to see you on the next show. So take good care.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.